Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to the Cripescast. I'm your host, Charlie Behrens. This is the podcast where we talk to people for and or from the Midwest. How's everyone's week going? Is it going good? Fantastic. No, my week's going good too. What did we do this week? Oh, my brother John turned 25. He actually works for Cripes Inc., which is a thing I named my company for whatever reason. And so what did we do? We went downtown. We went and did karaoke at the High Note. Also this week, we had a really fun video. It was called Dropping Your Kid Off at College. It was where two parents take their kid to college, drop them off, and you kind of see the differences between the mom and the dad. Did I play the mom and the dad? Yes, I played them both. How did you dress up as the mom, Charlie? Wore a wig and borrowed my mom's clip-ons. I don't want to talk about it, but I had a lot of fun with it. I wish I could take credit for this video, the idea and everything, but it wasn't mine. As many of you know, I got a very talented bunch of folks working with me, and one of them is my sister Bridget. I believe this might have been her inspired idea because she's actually living it. It could have also been Colleen's idea. Don't quote me on that, but one of theirs. And we all kind of collaborated on it, wrote a bunch of jokes, and it was a ton of fun. I think, you know, it's kind of a relatable thing happening right now. A lot of parents are dropping their kids off at school. And this was kind of unique because the kid in the video was my sister, and I was technically dropping her off at school. And this was the first time she's going to Madison. She's a sophomore now, but, you know, freshman year, obviously, COVID. So this is the second time in a month where I've made a video about something that was actually going down. The other one was when we did packing for up north. My dad was actually packing for up north as I was parodying him right next to him. Got a little tense in a few spots, I'm not gonna lie. But this video with my sister was great. She's actually a great actor. I think she could be on the CW, ladies and gentlemen. She could. Bridget, you did a great job. And yeah, so we moved her stuff in. She moved like half of it last week, but I don't know. It was a cool experience because I went to UW, so I was thinking about my time there, moving back in, and you know, how I used to go shopping for furniture off the sidewalks. You know, people take their old stuff to the curb, and I bring that back into my house, historically speaking. Did that in this video with a fridge we found outside. I forget which fraternity, Zeta, Theta, Delta. I don't know. I don't speak Greek very good. By the way, what does it take for a frat to throw a fridge out? I mean, like something terrible. There must have been a crime committed with that fridge for it to be out on the side of the road, because I don't really think frats throw things out. They may be listening to this and disputing it and say, no, we have a lovely house. You should come visit sometime. And to that, I say, no. Been there, done that, lost a tooth. Anyway, it was a really unique experience for me to take my second youngest sister to college and move her in. And by move her in, I mean watch her move her stuff while I prepared for this shoot that she came up with the idea for. I thought we had a lot of fun with it. So there you have it, a little rambling tour of my week. I hope you enjoyed it. But what you're going to enjoy a lot more is this interview we have coming up with Kate Witkowski. She is a professional lumberjack, ladies and gentlemen. And I am not talking just someone who picks up that piece of crap axe you got in your garage. Although, as somebody with many piece of crap axes in their garage, there's nothing wrong with swinging those in your backyard and thinking you're a lumberjack. But no, Kate is the real deal. She competes all over the U.S. Just listening to how she talks about lumberjacking makes you, you know, kind of wish you were dedicated to something as much as she is dedicated to that. And she is also an outdoor educator, which was very cool because I got in a lot of outdoor education off the top. So if you're listening to this, maybe you're not into lumberjacking. Maybe that's not your thing. But everybody needs to know how to survive, you know, falling into the drink. That's actually how we start this thing. We talk about falling into the ice and what you do to save yourself in those precious 10 minutes before you start losing proper brain function, if it's cold enough. So if that's not a reason to stay for this podcast, I don't know what is. But it was great talking to Kate. I think you'll really enjoy it. Now, before we get to that, I just want to take care of a couple housekeeping notes from Colleen, big news is, and I probably should have said this way earlier, but the podcast is moving to Wednesdays. Why are we moving it to Wednesdays? We looked at the analytics or whatever, and apparently that's when more people are there and listening, and we just want to have it for you earlier in the week. Let's see here. Other notes. Follow the Cripescast on socials. Don't forget to say it. Okay. I didn't forget, Colleen. Follow Cripescast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And oh yes, this is my favorite part. I've got some comments. First of all, thanks for rating the podcast and leaving your comments. That does help us quite a bit. This is from Tracy Fuller. She says, your interview with Yevang brought back memories of church potlucks in Wausau. We had a large Hmong membership, even a Hmong pastor. I remember looking forward to the giant bins of spring rolls they would bring. They made 2 batches, one for us, super bland, and one for them. That's hilarious. And if you haven't heard that podcast with Yevang, you should check that out. But he would really like that. I should send him this comment. Tracy continues, plus many bottles of hot sauce on the side. Of course, you got to have that, ladies and gentlemen. My childhood friend Pong Vang and her family had been through so much. Wow, that's an awesome comment and a great reminder to have people check out the Yevang podcast. It's been one of my favorites. On that note, thank you all for listening. And here is my conversation with Kate Witkowski. Which school are you at right now?
I'm at Northern Waters Environmental School. It's a really, really tiny outdoor charter school in Hayward. So we do lots of camping and fishing and canoeing and all that good stuff.
That's cool. How long have you been doing that part?
I've been here. This will be my 4th school year with the school in Hayward. Yeah.
Nice. And what's the age range here?
I teach 6th through 12th grade students. We've only got about less than 40 students and 2 teachers. So we're really kind of like a one-room schoolhouse a little bit. It's a tight family at this school. Yeah.
And what kind of stuff are you teaching them?
So our big project this year, we're project-based learning. So we they don't go to English class and then science class. It's big projects, and a lot of them are independently driven. So the students build their own projects and work through them independently. But we're also doing a big humans and nature project this year where we're going to go out wild ricing. We're going to go harvest some food, build up a big harvest fest. I'm actually going to get them out hunting. So we're going to do hunter's ed. Just explore lots of different ways we can connect with nature. Yeah.
That would be very fun. And you teach survival stuff as well, right?
A little bit. Yeah. We kind of have an open curriculum. So we get to kind of build whatever curriculum works for the students. And a lot of it is seasonal driven work. One of my favorite projects we did 2 winters ago was a winter survival project where the test for the project was us dumping students in a frozen lake, and they had to survive that experience. So they were fully jumping into a frozen lake, and that was the exam for that project.
Wow. And it's how do we know if we pass or fail? Are you still breathing, kid, or what?
You have a pulse, yeah.
Right. So what that's actually great. And we'll get to all the lumberjacking in a second, but because there are a bunch of ice fishers out there, there are a bunch of people who could be in that situation. What do you have to know if you fall into a frozen lake?
Yeah, and that's one of the main things. We're trying to teach students things that they will actually experience in real life. And every one of our students goes ice fishing. And so I would say the main thing to remember is don't panic. When you start flailing and panicking, you'll hyperventilate, and it's a lot easier to drown. So if you can recognize that it's really cold, but try to take a deep breath, that's a good first step, is just to calm your breathing and try not to panic.
Okay, and hyperventilating, for those who don't know, it just means
really rapid breath rate. So if you increase your breath rate, you're going to increase your heart rate, and that's going to kind of just set your body at a stressed state. So if you can calm yourself down, calm your breathing, you can calm your heart rate. It's a lot easier to think and make rational decisions. And when you've just fallen through the ice, that's pretty important to be able to make some good choices after that point. Yeah.
Okay. So you're in the water now, you're submerged, your clothes are most likely heavy if it's the winter. Yeah. So what's your next move after you calm down?
Really heavy. Your next move, if you've caught your breath, is to try to grab onto the ice. So if you can kind of like hoist yourself up onto the edge of the ice a little bit, if someone's with you, that's great. If not, at the bare minimum, you're going to freeze yourself to the edge of the ice there. So even if you do pass out, you'll still be frozen to the edge of the ice. You won't go under. So get your arms up on the edge of the ice and take a breath there as well before the next move.
Okay. And then do you kind of do like the seal kind of thing to get your way back up there? Is that it? I've watched a lot of Planet Earth, so.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm not like an expert, but I'm pretty close, you know.
Channel your inner seal would be the next move.
Okay.
You get yourself up there and basically you just kick with everything you've got. Try to get your feet level. So if you try kicking, like, when you get out of a pool, you push on the bottom of the pool, jump out. That's not what you want to do. You want to kick so your body's level with the ice.
Got it.
So that you can kind of just like slither your way out onto the ice a little bit.
So if you get yourself up onto the ice, how long do you have before you're a goner? I suppose it depends how cold it is, but what's the rule of thumb?
The rule of thumb, you actually have a little bit longer than you would think. Even when you're in the water, you have a few minutes before your body will start reacting, will start slowing down. But you can be in there for upwards of 10 minutes in that environment without like starting to get brain damage, essentially. If you hop out, if you can get yourself out, like kind of rolling, slithering away, not standing up right away is the move to go. But you have longer than you think generally. And so that's the idea of not panicking is really what's going to help you.
Okay, cool. But then you're out, and if you're in the middle of nowhere, what's your move? Because I mean, you need a fire source, right? But let's say, is that a necessity, or if you don't have that, do you have other options?
Ooh, I don't know. I think it depends on where you are and if you're with somebody. I've never experienced a fall in fully clothed, but getting warm and getting those wet clothes off is pretty important. I don't know what the next move is.
Got it.
Holler for the ice fixer. Sorry.
All right. Yeah.
Find
the guy down the way with the ice shanty with the heater in it and everything, and see if he can help out. He's probably got beer too, folks.
Warming from the inside.
Yeah. Are there other things that people generally don't know, and you're like, man, I can't believe more people don't know this before they venture out into the woods?
My strategy, the thing that I'm always like drilling into students is just being prepared saves you from a lot of different situations. So, just knowing where you're going and letting people know if you're going out alone. I do a lot of adventuring outdoors alone, letting people know where you're going. I don't know. It's like my dad. I can hear my dad's voice in the back of my head, like, pack more than you think you need. Always bring a jacket, like that. I don't know, like simple stuff. I guess just simple stuff is what people often forget. Yeah.
Okay. What about, these are the ones I feel like people bring up a lot. What about a bear? What are people supposed to do if they see a bear?
Yeah. That depends on what kind of bear you're coming across. In northern Wisconsin, you're more than likely if it's a bear, it's going to be a black bear. Generally with black bears, they're pretty skittish actually, and you can usually just scare them away. So make yourself big, shout at them, and get them away that way. Grizzly bears out west is a little different. And I'm not as familiar with that. I have actually scared a few black bears away by kind of just shouting at them.
Yeah.
But with grizzlies, the move is different. It's kind of like slowly back away, don't run, don't threaten them generally. So
so grizzly, slowly back away. You don't want to look bigger. You don't want to look threatening at all for a grizzly.
Yeah. I think that's the move. Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Okay, cool. Have you ever seen, and this is more of a me question than anybody else, a wolverine?
Ooh, I've never seen a wolverine, but I've tracked wolverines in northwestern Montana.
No kidding. How do you go about doing that?
Before I went to UW-Stevens Point, I went to school out in Missoula, and I took a winter wildlife class. And we were out with like professional carnivore biologists, and we were tracking in the snow. So they had like they had a clue in on where some wolverines might be. And so we were just up trucking around in the mountains until we found some tracks and then followed them like to a den site and stuff. But we didn't end up seeing one in person, I guess, but just tracks. Yeah. They exist.
Yeah. I swear to you, I've said before on this podcast to a few other people, but I saw a wolverine in the driftless area of Wisconsin.
No way.
Yeah. It was late at night. Yes, I was drinking, and it was dark. But someone said, no, it's not Wolverine, it's a fisher. But I've since spent a lot of time looking at fishers on videos. I don't think it was a fisher. I think it was a Wolverine.
So that moment has stayed with you.
It really has.
Like haunted by that driftless Wolverine.
Because those Wolverines, they can be mean little suckers, can't they?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. They're pretty aggressive and can take down a wolf. Yeah. They're pretty vicious creatures. Pretty cool.
You went out looking for them, which makes you even more badass.
You're chasing them around.
How do you get into basically being a badass lumberjack? I think that's your lower third here. That's your title.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's the way to go. Yeah. Well, I started lumberjacking at UW Stevens Point. So it's actually I had a crush on a guy who was a lumberjack, and I was like, oh, I'll see what this is about. And I joined the team and was like, wow, this is so much cooler than that guy. Lumberjack.
So it didn't work out with the guy, but you and the axe have a good relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's where I put my emotional energy.
That's good.
Yeah, so I started lumberjacking, and it was like kind of love at first swing. My first block I chopped, I was like, this is the sport for me. I've kind of always played sports, but this was something different. So
what was it? I mean, you've played other sports. Why did this one connect so much to you?
Oh yeah, I think that it's an individual sport. So like it's really rewarding to set like goals for myself and know that it's just me working towards that goal. And if I if I fail or succeed, it's because of effort that I've done. I mean, I get a lot of support from a lot of people in this sport, but ultimately you're the only person up there at go time. So I think a little bit of that, like personal challenge for sure. And then I think a little bit of the uniqueness of the sport and prestige and not quirkiness, but like, it's not something that you grow up being like, I can't wait to be a competitive lumberjack. Right. So
right.
That makes it fun too. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you ever see yourself when you did that first swing, like going to the level of competing professionally?
Yeah, kind of actually. The first person to teach me was Nancy Zaleski. She actually lives in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. And she,
nice.
I know, right? Yeah. She's like a multi-time world champion lumberjack. And so she was kind of my mentor and coach, and kind of like the goal for me was like, I want to get to the point where she is in competition. And so, yeah, right away, I kind of felt like I wanted to put effort into it. Yeah.
Can you explain exactly what it is your sport entails to somebody who's never heard of it or had any association with it?
Yeah, at its core, you just cut wood as fast as you can. Which is kind of
sweet.
Yeah, you just cut through wood. Yeah, it seems silly when you say it like that, but yeah. So we are competitive lumberjacks, and all of the events that we compete in are kind of mimicking actual work that lumberjacks did in the old days when they were felling and harvesting out in the woods by hand. So all of our events kind of mimic that whole process of felling a tree, bucking it up, cutting it up, sawing it down, or sawing it into pieces. But we've kind of just elevated that to a racing point. So now we are just racing as fast as we can to get through the wood as fast as we can. And that's what we get judged on, is basically speed.
So how do you practice this? Is it you got a bunch of, because there's probably a big environmental component to this too, right? In terms of sustainability and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. The big competition here in Hayward, the Lumberjack World Championships, that happens every July, sources all of their wood from the Menominee Tribal Enterprises, the reservation in central eastern Wisconsin, and they have world-renowned sustainable forestry practices there at that reservation. So Yeah, I mean, our goal is to have wood available to cut in perpetuity. So, we have to make sure that what we're harvesting is done sustainably and is the right tree to harvest, and we're not just cutting everything down. Not only is that not healthy for the environment, but then we kind of are parasites and we kill our source, right? If we don't have an option to do it in the future, then
right, you chop yourself out of a job if you do it the wrong way. Have you had any close calls with the axe or the saw?
Yeah, the first time I ever chopped, I glanced and my axe went right into my foot and chopped the tip of my well, hold on. It tipped the shoe off. So my tip of my shoe came off, but we were chainmail. So I had old tiny like knights battling chainmail. We wear that on our feet. So it hit my foot. I still have all my toes.
Okay. That was from my follow-up
question. The chainmail protected it. Sorry. No, I led into that one.
Yeah.
Scary in a scary way. Sorry.
It's a good promo for this podcast, though. I chopped my foot off. Yeah, perfect. Done. Sell it. So that was your first time? Your first time competing?
It was just training, actually. So I was just training. I had no idea what I was doing. And Nancy, who was training me, the professional lumberjack who was training me, her strategy was, here's an axe, here's a block of wood. I just want to see what you can do. So she just kind of put me up there, and I swung and went into my shoe. But it didn't scare me away, I guess.
I guess that's probably a good tactic. She probably knew there was a 40% chance you were losing half your shoe, but I like that tactic. That's good.
That was her test to see if she still wanted to keep training me.
Right. Yeah. If that scares you away, this wasn't meant for you, but it did for you. And is that a big thing that happens though? Are there a lot of injuries in this sport?
I would say there's more so like joint and muscle injuries. When we first are starting out, there's like little times where you glance the axe or something like that. But when I was trained in by professionals, like the number one rule was this gear can chop your arm off. It can chop your foot off. It can really hurt you if you're not being careful. So when we're competing or around our gear, it's like any dangerous tool, you kind of are at like a heightened level of awareness about it. And so there aren't often like cut injuries or like people don't like chop their hands off, in competition. We get like nicks and stuff like that. But honestly, most lumberjacks just have bad backs.
Yeah.
That's the main injury.
That's kind of like a Midwest thing too. It's like, if you don't have a bad back, you're like, what's wrong with this guy over here? What's wrong with this gal over here? Your back's fine, just not working hard enough. Like, when in doubt, always just complain about a bad back, Right? No one will suspect you have soft hands then, What is your favorite part of the sport?
I think a lot of it is that like personal challenge. So like setting a goal for myself, working to achieve it, and then putting myself to the test. But our sport is also really unique in that there just aren't a lot of people that do it. Mm-hmm. So we're a really tight-knit community. Even like the people I compete against, I also compete with in some team events, or like we're all traveling together. We're all kind of like a little traveling circus a little bit in the summer. We just like hop around from competition to competition and like live out of the back of our trucks. So we get pretty close. So a lot of it is the social aspect of the sport as well.
That's cool. And have you ever tried doing the log roll, like where you're running on the logs and whatnot?
I have.
How are you at that?
So bad.
It's a different skill set. What's someone who has a good skill set for that? What sport might they have played?
So they're fast. So track or like soccer players or like hockey, people that move fast and are really good with balance. I'm good at lifting up big things and hitting them hard.
You're a leverage person.
Sure. Yeah. I've tried the rolling and the running, but just like for comical reasons. It doesn't work out well for me.
It doesn't work out. And how many events do you do in a given summer?
Yeah, it depends. This was our first. So we had last summer off pretty much. I didn't compete at all. And this summer, I've actually been competing for the past 5 weekends. So I was down in Arkansas, then I was up here, and I went out to Pennsylvania, and then I actually just got back from New York this morning competing. So
wow. How did you do out there?
Good. It was a good weekend. I would say it was maybe my best results so far this summer. It was a lot of fun.
And is it like cash prizes or cash to the winner? Is it work kind of like golf where cash prize goes to the winner and that whole thing?
Yeah, basically. So most of the people that are competitive lumberjacks do it. I mean, we call this a hobby, I guess. We all have full-time jobs otherwise. So we're kind of fronting our own way to these competitions. And you're not making money if you're not winning, essentially. So, yeah.
So if you're going out, you're doing everything you can to win.
Absolutely. Yeah. Got to pay my trip bills.
Yeah. You've got like this crew of people who you kind of compete with and do this. Are you competitive off the course? Can we call it a course? Is that cool?
Sure. Most of our competitions are on like the chopping and sawing deck. We build a deck for it.
Okay.
The deck,
so you're on the deck. Do you have like these Rocky Drago moments where you're like, you know, like where you have your nemesis and everything? Is that real, or are you just like friends after?
It's a interesting social dynamic, that's for sure. Yeah, we're all friendly with each other, but yeah, there are people that I'm like, I want to be that one. I want to be that person every time. So I'm sure everybody feels that way to some extent, but it doesn't probably get quite as far as Rocky, but yeah, there's some drama behind the scenes for sure.
Oh, okay, cool. Any weird stories you want to share from the road?
Lumberjack shenanigans, you know, it happens. You gotta what's the phrase I'm looking for? What happens on the lumberjack road stays on the lumberjack road.
Okay. I see how it is.
Yeah, I don't know. We get into some fun times, but mostly it's like just hanging out in the back of trucks, drinking beers after shows. Like that's pretty much life on the road.
With sharp objects everywhere. That sounds like a pretty solid combination of everything. Cheapers criminy, folks. Excuse the interruption, but we got some sponsors we got to thank here. First of all, Jolly Good Soda. I mean, honest to Pete, it's not just good, it's jolly good. Where is it from, Charlie? Random Lake, Wisconsin. That's right. It is the pride of Random Lake, Wisconsin, ladies and gents. You bet your tush. And honest to Pete, if you are going your way through Wisconsin, you stop yourself at a Woodman's or a Festival Foods or, a Piggly Wiggly, shop the pig, okay, or Quick Trip or whatever, and you just says to them, hey, you got Jolly Good Soda or no? Most of them got it, and if they says or no, well, then you say, well, and so? And then if they says or no back, just say, can you just please stock it with Jolly Good? I'll bring you rhubarb as a thank you. So there you got it, Jolly Good. Thanks for sponsoring the podcast. Also, Duluth Trading Company, who is actually Kate Witkowski's sponsor, and we'll hear about that later on in the podcast. But they are just very supportive. They're a great company. And I mean, they're supportive of women in lumberjacking. They're supporting of, guys with podcasts. Okay. And they also have clothes that got a lot of support for your situation down there, whatever your situation may be. Okay. And what I'm talking about is their Crouch Gusset. Okay. It flexes, it moves, it supports. I'll let you do the math on that. So get yourself over to DuluthTrading.com. Oh, and I forgot the Jolly Good website again, JollyGoodSoda.com. Okie dokes. All right, back to the podcast. Have fun. Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Plymouth, Wisconsin was the school I went to. So halfway between like Fond du Lac, Sheboygan, just between Lake Winnebago and Lake Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah. And growing up, were you active in sports and everything like that?
Yep. I played soccer until I blew up my knees. So that's why this sport works well. I don't have to run. And then I swam and played volleyball. I was always just pretty athletic and competitive.
So in doing this, you kind of found that same sort of competitive edge in nature in that.
Yeah, pretty much. It was kind of like a sport that fit well with the skills that I have essentially. And then it's easy to stay driven in it because I'm usually working independently at it, on my own. So I put in the time that I want to for it and hopefully see results. I do have partners when I compete, but not always.
Okay. Yeah. So your average person who's like going out in the back to chop some wood, what are they probably doing wrong?
They're probably using their arms too much.
Okay.
They're probably approaching it too much like I think there's this mentality when you talk about lumberjacking that everyone's like, yes, lumberjacking, I'm going to attack the wood. You know, they're just like swinging axes like madmen. And I don't know, that probably looks cool or feels fun.
Yeah.
But it's actually a quite technical sport. There's a lot of technique that goes into it. So they're probably, only trying to use their biceps, and they're probably just like going ham, which isn't a good approach always for competing. Yeah.
Okay. So it's more of like a golf swing kind of. You don't want to just muscle it. You have like a fluid motion that you've got to figure out. Is that fair to say?
That's very fair to say. Most competitors kind of reach their peak like in their 30s because they have some of that experience, that technique. I mean, you can go out there and just like hit the block as hard as you can. And if you're strong enough, you'll muscle through it. But somebody who has good technique is always going to beat you because so much of that technique is important. Yeah, like a golf swing, the angles, leverage, angles and levers and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So like bring it up. What is it? Is it in the hips? I know we're kind of sitting, but how do you find the motion here? I'm trying to give your average person screwing around in the backyard a little bit of a leg up on their neighbor.
Yeah, you got to square up. So if you're splitting wood by hand, that's pretty analogous to an underhand chop. So a horizontal block chop where we would be standing on the block of wood and cutting in between our feet.
Okay.
So it's a similar movement. You got to square up to the log. A lot of people go sideways and you'll glance and get all weird. So square up to the log like you were going to fight it, you know, and then arms go straight up over your head. None of this like weird.
Oh, really?
Like roundhousing.
Okay, I'm a roundhouser. I'm straight up a roundhouser. So, because I think going over the head seems a little bit overkill. So, I don't want to be overkilling it, Yeah. So I'm kind of lazy half-assing it, but it's straight up over and down. Like you're in a medieval battle or something.
Yeah, basically like you were finishing something. So use your hips and butt and core. That's where your power is. So roundhousing, you're getting like weird back twisty action. But yeah, use your butt basically is my advice.
All right. That's how you end up with a bad back is if you don't use your butt. Okay.
Yeah.
And what are the different chops? You mentioned one. How many different chops are there?
For the women, actually, we just got opportunity to cut a new chop. So we have underhand chop or horizontal block chop where you stand on the wood and cut in between your feet, and that mimics blocking up the wood like a tree. Once you've felled it, you're blocking it into smaller pieces. Then we have standing block chop, which mimics cutting the tree down, so you're standing kind of next to a vertical block of wood and you're cutting it kind of like a swinging a bat, kind of similar motion. So women do those two chops right now. Men have also what's called a springboard chop, which mimics felling trees. Like often if you're felling on like a mountainside or a steep slope, you have to put notches into the tree to get high enough to cut it down on that steep slope. So the men are cutting those notches. You may have seen them like climbing up the tree and swinging at the top of the tree.
Yeah. That brings up a really good point, though. This is obviously a male-dominated sport, and I suppose that's true historically as well. And what is it like being a woman in a male-dominated sport, especially given the fact that, it seems like you could do pretty much anything, and yet there are some competitions that women don't have?
Yeah, I think, women in the sport, I've been competing for about 10 years. And in those 10 years, the opportunities and advancement for women in the sport has been pretty incredible. I've seen a lot of growth. Even when I started 10 years ago, there was a lot of guys in the sport that, would verbalize that they didn't think women should be competing other than to be the partner for a man in the Jack and Jill sawing event. And that's how women first started. It was a lot of like wives that the men needed as partners. And so they kind of started filtering in. And then as women started getting more involved, they started realizing that they could do this in their own right. They could also compete at a high level. So it's gradually started adding events, and the Steel Timber Sports Series, which is kind of like our biggest event, Steel Timber Sports event. The men have been competing in Steel Timber Sports since like the 80s in the US. And this past summer was only the 4th year that women had a competition for Steel Series. And I'm really proud to be one of the women that's been part of that Steel Timber Sports women's division all 4 years that that they've offered it. So I kind of was there from the ground up. So I'm excited to kind of continue to push momentum forward. And we're dealing with a lot of the same things that other female athletes are dealing with. We're fighting for equal payout. We're fighting for equal opportunities, equal airtime. But right now it feels really good. Like we have a lot of momentum, and there are a lot of men in the sport actually kind of taking a step back so that we can take a step forward, which is really cool.
And how do they take a step back?
So sometimes they're having to give up an event. All of the events, the majority of the events that we do are athlete run. So athletes are putting on the events, they're finding sponsors, they're getting funding for it. So sometimes we have a limited pool of funds for a certain event. So whereas it used to be, the men had 9 events and the women had 2, now sometimes the men have 7 events and the women have 4. So they're starting to take some of those steps back and give up a little bit of the opportunity, a little bit of the funding, so that we can have an opportunity for that as well.
And there are other ways that you can make money doing this, i.e. sponsorships, or we're partnering with brands and everything. And I guess this is actually a good transition into Duluth, who, full disclosure for anyone listening, is also a sponsor of this podcast, but they also are a sponsor of you. So what does that look like? And are there a bunch of opportunities like that in the sport?
Yeah, I think, Duluth has been a great sponsor to the sport. Duluth Trading Company has sponsored Steel Timber Sports in all 4 of the years that I've competed with them, and they outfit us with gear, which is really awesome to know that when we're competing, we get really functional and comfy gear to wear when we're competing. And then, they're also just like super gung ho for us. It's really fun to have a sponsor that is really excited about what we do and excited about sharing what we do. So they've been really, really cool about that. And other athletes find other sponsorship where they can. A lot of it's, you kind of find your own sponsors, and hopefully you find somebody that has a good fit and appreciates the sport for kind of the crazy sport that it is.
Mm-hmm. Have you found, you kind of mentioned a little bit before, but sort of subtle or overt sexism that has happened or continues to happen in the sport?
Yeah, when I first started, that was a lot of, it took a while for me to kind of get my feet and understand like what I was capable of as a woman in the sport. And in order to do that, I needed the help of a lot of men that had been doing it for a long time. So when I started, I was using other people's gear, and men were prepping blocks for me. So like doing things for me in order for me to learn. And I remember very distinctly, like maybe it had been 2 years of me competing. So I had like 2 years under my belt, and I was getting more comfortable with it. And, I was prepping a block. So we make like footholds in our underhand blocks, so we have something to stand on. And, one of the men who had helped me in the past, kind of like came up to push me aside so that he could put my footholds in for me. And he said, "Here, Kate, I'll do this for you." And I was like, "No, I can do it on my own." And he's like, "I don't know if you can." And I kind of had to stand him down and be like, "No, I'm doing this on my own." And then kind of show up for it. Like he ended up being surprised that I could do it, which unfortunately he was surprised, but I did it. And so it took a lot of me kind of like standing up and saying, "No, I can do this. I'm capable of this." And then being there and making sure they saw that we are capable of it as women as well. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, I guess, because in that scenario, perhaps he seemed, or in his mind, he was trying to help, but in your mind, it wasn't helping. It was sort of a form of sexism, I guess. Is that, do you see that a lot, or do you have like almost things to look out for if, somebody is trying to help, but really they're kind of being a little sexist with it?
Yeah, I think that's most of it, which is hard too, to find that like balance, that gray area. Most people are just trying to be helpful. And so being able to recognize that, like good intentions, and then not like burn that bridge with that person, right? They weren't being intentionally sexist, but that's something hard. That type of sexism is really hard for people to understand if they're not kind of on that receiving end of this sexism. Like why is that something that would hinder me rather than help me, is really hard for them to understand. So some of those like late night after competition tailgate beers are a good time to have those conversations, I think, where people are a little bit, their defenses are down a little bit. And so me and a lot of other women in the sport have started having those conversations with each other, and it started trickling out. We have male partners in the sport that we compete with. And so like they've kind of opened their ear to hearing our stories and kind of recognizing that they have a role in it. And that's been really cool to see. There are still like occasional bouts of like pretty deliberate sexism. Some of the sport was like traditionally like big burly men just like besting each other in the woods. And it's kind of moving more towards like an athletic competition. But some of the people that were part of the sport back then still, are like cracking jokes about, like hooking up with women and, like in the middle of competition, some of that stuff still happens that we hopefully will gradually start weeding out for sure.
Where do you see room for the sport to improve with respect to gender equality?
I think it's starting to get a lot of momentum from the ground up. So the athletes and we're kind of trying to fight for opportunities for ourselves. And some of the men that have a little bit more of that power in the sport are starting to hear that and see that and make room for that. But I think it also it's like a question of like, if you build it, we will come kind of. I think there's a lot of hesitancy right now with like, well, there's not enough women that are capable of it. There's not enough women that can do it. So we're not going to create the opportunity for them to try. And so we're fighting right now to prove that we are capable of it if we get that opportunity. So, like I said, women have been competing for 4 years in the steel timber sports. And in those 4 years, the field of competition has grown exponentially, and I think we're freaking exciting to watch. So, that's the goal. So we just need to get some of those like big sponsors and people that are putting on the shows. Duluth is always a huge support for the women in the sport. So some more of those things are kind of needed, some of the top down support.
Mm-hmm. What is your end goal with being a professional lumberjack? When do you think you would get to a point where you're like, I've done it? And maybe I'll retire at this point.
That's a good question. It's kind of like better to burn out than to fade away.
Right.
I think for me, it's like that's going to be dependent on my body. Mm-hmm. If my body can hold out, I'll keep doing it. I think I'll do it as long as I'm having fun doing it. And some component of that is as long as I'm winning. I don't want to say I only have fun when I win, but it is really fun to win. So as long as I'm competitive in it, I think I'll want to keep competing. And once I'm not, hopefully I'll be able to give back to the sport and train people and build it up like other competitors have done for me.
Got it. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. By the way, what role does Paul Bunyan have for Lumberjacks? Do Lumberjacks look up at Paul Bunyan and go, it's a pancake place? Or does he still hold a pretty good legendary stronghold in the lumberjack community?
We are our own Paul Bunyans, like we are our own icons. I don't know.
That was insulting. Then that was insulting. It's like, how dare you? Would you ask like a pea grower if they look to the Jolly Green Giant? Is that kind of, that's what the Jolly Green
is that
Giant
how that came across?
I don't know. Maybe I insulted you. I don't know. So Paul Bunyan, just a thing you see on the roadside. No big integration here.
No, I'm sure I wouldn't be where I am without Paul Bunyan. But that's one of the things. Hopefully we're trying to move away from this stereotype of who a lumberjack is. Mm-hmm. And so, whereas Paul Bunyan maybe was a good starting point for lumberjacks becoming who they are, hopefully we can start looking towards other icons, maybe some female lumberjack icons to kind of lead the way.
Throw it out there. You got Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox. What is your version of a more ideal representation?
Ooh, I guess I would like to see a lady lumberjack as a fairy tale. Is that what would you call Paul Bunyan?
Tall tale, BS, something like that.
Yeah. I want a lady lumberjack tall tale.
Okay. What would her name be? I feel like we got to give a name.
Okay. Well, is Jill too easy? Is it too easy if her name is Jill?
No, I don't think it's too.
Okay.
I mean, Paul. That's pretty easy. It's pretty low hanging tree. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big. It's hard though, because when you start going to women, you don't want to call her like Big Jill. That's not a good thing.
No, that is, well, you know, I guess not. I'll let you be the determination. Okay,
I'll think on it.
Okay, all right. Tentatively though, we'll put a pin in Jill, and then are we thinking Big Blue Ox, or are we going in a completely different direction with?
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. I mean, we could go draft horse. I'm trying to think still like lumberjacking. She needs a draft horse. Yeah.
Draft horse. Yeah. That's more pragmatic, I think, than
functional.
Yeah. I like it. I think we're off to a good start here.
Okay. Well, yeah, I hear like a children's book in the future.
Yeah, right. You got to write it. And then that could be the ticket.
You can voice it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. What would your advice be to young women looking to get into this sport?
Yeah, it's a tough sport to get into. I started in college, and that's a pretty good spot to start. But now that we're getting a little bit more momentum, and especially like social media is a big place where you can see athletes and interact with them. My advice to somebody who's interested in the sport is to reach out to a professional athlete. Mm-hmm. If you see somebody and you're like, wow, that's really cool that person's doing that. Maybe they live in my state. Maybe they live near me. Shoot us a message. Most lumberjacks are so excited about being a lumberjack that we just want to talk to other people about it. And we want new people to be coming in. So if you're interested, shoot a message to a lumberjack through social. And hopefully if you're dedicated enough, it takes a lot, you got to put a lot into to get somewhere in the sport, but you never know. One of us might take you under our wing. So reach out to us for sure.
And let's say they got a backyard and an axe. What's the move? What's the one to start off with? Yeah,
just splitting wood is a good place to start. The gear that we use, you can't pick up at the hardware store. So if you just have like an axe from the hardware store, just be splitting wood, get the muscles moving, get used to the movement. And then if you can find access to the gear we use is like, I get most of my axes from New Zealand, specialty order. So got to get some gear in order to be competitive.
Custom job, huh? So that it's like what, a better handle, better steel?
Yeah. Bigger, better, sharper.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Sharp enough to almost take off your foot. So
it would do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then order some chainmail too. I'm going to throw that in there just in case.
Yes. That's a necessity. Chainmail, safety gear for sure.
Look twice, cut once. Otherwise, you look. That's just my own personal advice from almost cutting off my own finger. So,
have you dabbled in lumberjack?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've cut wood basically. Yeah. Not to sit here and one up you or anything or brag. This wouldn't be the place. But yeah, I've chopped a lot of wood, very improperly after listening to you. So yeah, it's probably why my back's so screwed up. So. Well, anyway, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on and chit-chatting. Can anybody come see you in the near future?
Yeah. So my next in-person competition is in Buffalo, New York. But the Steel Timber Sports competition that already happened in July will be airing on CBS Sports this fall. We don't have exact air dates yet, but we'll be on CBS Sports. So keep an eye out this fall for some pretty impressive competition, I guess. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, great talking to you too. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Right. See ya. And that is it for this week's episode of the Cripescast. Sincere thank you to all of you for listening to this podcast. It is really one of the most enjoyable things that I do, talking to all these amazing people. So really thank you for listening. You help, make it possible. Yes, you do know, Charlie. I do know. You help me make this possible. You help make this possible for me. That's the way I wanted to do it. So thank you all for making this podcast possible. And, I just don't know any other way to say it, but to thank you folks, just come on over to my garage. I've invited you there before, but in the venison freezer, I do got rhubarb, and that is for you. As a thank you, a sincere thank you. Don't worry, there's plenty of rhubarb. Okay, you know how Jesus multiplied the fishes? Well, you know, the good Lord multiplied the rhubarb in my backyard, and I've just been freezing it for years. Okay, and it's good for up to 4 years. I'll tell you that. A little freezer burnt, but you know, it still tastes real good when it's in a pie or bread or you know anything really. Put in your smoothies. I mean, it's good. It's good for good roughage too. I'll get into that next week. But anywho, hey, keep her moving. Tell your folks I says hi, and watch out for deer. This is the Cripescast. Bye bye.
So roll out the barrel and get the band brewing. Life's got you down, just keep her moving. It's on Wisconsin, the Badgers say it's the old Wisconsin Jubilee.
You know, sometimes when you're ice fishing, you put your foot in the walleye hole and go ass over tea kettle and you think you're done. No, you gotta keep her moving.